Okay. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai. E hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei Māori ora. Right. Tēnā koutou katoa no mai ki te hui o Wellington Region Waste Management and Minimisation Plan Joint Committee I tēnei rā. So welcome everyone to today's Wellington Region Waste Management and Minimisation Plan Joint Committee meeting. It would be wonderful if we could get a more condensed name for that wasn't an acronym. Also, please let me or the Democracy Advisor Heidi here know if you intend to leave the meeting. And te haurua I te tekau karaka, te kai, timo timo o te ata. So we will be aiming for morning tea at 10:30 a.m, but hopefully that will be the completion of the meeting. I would just like to acknowledge that this will be our last meeting for the triennium. So if we do have time at the end, any councillor reflections would be most welcomed. So moving on, apologies. Do I move the motion that the Wellington Region Waste Management and Minimisation Plan Joint Committee accepts the apology for Councillor Mailman for absence? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lee, how convenient to have you in the room. Are there any other apologies? I see none. So those in favour, please press 1, and those against, please press 2.
And those online can vote with.
Okay, and online you can vote with your little actions, and Councillor Lee and I will put up our hands.
Thumbs up from everybody online, that's carried.
Great. So, ka whakapuaki au kua mana te mōtini. So I declare the motion carried. Conflict of interest declarations. So I call on members to declare any conflicts of interest they may have in relation to any of the items on the agenda. I see none, so we'll move on to the confirmation of minutes. I move the motion that the Wellington Region Waste Management and Minimisation Plan Joint Committee approves the minutes of this committee held on the 13th of June 2022, having been circulated, that they be taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of that meeting.
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. Is that you, Councillor Taylor?
Taylor. Yes.
Great. I can't see you, Councillor Taylor, so please put on your camera so I can. Lovely. There you go. And what a view. Okay, so we've moved and seconded that motion. I now put the motion which has been moved and seconded. Those in favour, please press say aye, or make your motion on your action on the screen. Was that an aye from you, Councillor Lee? Great.
Yes, that looks like it has carried.
Great. Ka whakapuaki au kua mana te mōtini. I declare the motion carried. And there are no items not on the agenda, but just to give a really warm welcome to everyone online and a warm welcome to everyone in the room. And we now will move into public participation, and we have Sue Coots from the Zero Waste Network to speak about the container return scheme. Sue, thank you very much for coming in, and we look forward to hearing your kōrero. It's all yours. You can take it away.
Okay, Atamari everyone. A beautiful sunny day where I am today down in Wanaka, and in my job I get to travel around to lots of different places in the country because the Zero Waste Network has members from far north right down to the far south. We have about 61 members who run sites and education and engagement programs around the country. About 1,200 employees, turnover about 80 million. So, we're kind of reasonably substantial entity. You might know Sustainability Trust in Wellington is one of our members, and so that just gives you a sort of a bit of an idea of the kinds of people that I represent. And there's quite a few councils around the country that are associate members of Zero Waste Network as well, who want to support the work that we're doing. So we work together on practical projects. Like one of the ones we've been working on is supporting Auckland Council to roll out their resource recovery network. And another project that we've been working on a lot is sort of in line with our idea to try to get policy in action that's going to support shift to zero waste and circular economy is container return scheme. Some of you will know it's been a bit of a long game. I've been talking about it for 20 years in New Zealand, and we've finally got to the stage where government is going, oh, we think we might do something about this. And I just wanted to give you guys a heads up about 2 or 3 things that are in the document, hundreds of pages of writing about it so far from government, but I wanted to give you guys a heads up because I know you're working on your waste minimisation and management plan over the next 12 months. And I thought it's useful to understand maybe 1 or 2 things that we think are really important. And the reason I'm talking to you guys today is because I think that, we have a bit of overlap there. So the first step really is to, get a scheme in place. It would be great to have a container return scheme. But the second idea is really to make sure that the one we do get is really good for communities, really good for councils. And councils are big stakeholders because a lot of the recycling that gets done in New Zealand is paid for by council and, through that chain ratepayers. So it's a very important thing for you guys to have your head around and to be able to think about it because it does have a big implication for your budgets in the years to come. Just super quick outline of what a container return scheme is. So in case anybody hasn't really heard about it before, it's basically the idea that we have a lot of single-use drink containers in the world. We'd really love to get the recycling rates up and to stop the littering of those containers. And so around the world, people have been putting in place these things they call container return scheme. What you do is you set some legislation in place. It's a regulatory tool which uses economic instruments, and basically it covers all drink containers. In New Zealand, we're kind of going beer, soft drink, wine, all the juices, and then Tetra Paks at the moment, and just thinking about where the milk might go in. There's a deposit in the purchase price. So at the moment they're saying that'll be 20 cents. And when you buy your drink, you pay the 20 cents. When you take it back for recycling, you get your 20 cents back. So the idea is that it creates an incentive for people to take their, to take their containers back. And it also creates an incentive that if you're a kid cruising down the street and you see some containers on the ground, then you're very likely to pick them up and take them and trade them in for the cash. The producers, the big, sort of the big move really is that it makes producers responsible for covering the cost of recycling. At the moment, pretty much, as I was saying, the recycling costs are covered by council. And that puts a lot of pressure on you guys when it comes to, the budget round and you're trying to trade off active transport against social good, against environmental protection or climate change work or recycling. It'd be great if the recycling system would pay for itself and you could lift that cost out of your budget. You might still have some responsibilities for overseeing it and making sure it happens, but you wouldn't have to actually pay the full cost. What we know from some of the work that other councils have been doing in the last few years is that $50 million a year councils spend on just recycling glass bottles. So it's a big ticket item for you guys. And that's only the glass. It's not the cardboard, not all the plastic, not the cans. So it's really worth thinking about. So far, these kind of schemes came in around the 1970s when people started to shift away from using refillables and into single-use containers. They have been happening in places like South Australia and Canada for a long time, and they're slowly spreading through the world. So a lot of European countries have implemented them the last 10, 15 years, and Australia the last 5 or 10 years has really been pushing the boat out. So we've got every state and territory in Australia has either got a scheme in place or they will have one soon. And in New Zealand, 2019, Auckland Council and Marlborough Council started to work on what a scheme design might look like to be able to put it up to government to consider. Minister Parker and his team have been looking at it for the last couple of years, and you might have seen that there was a consultation from government came out last year talking about, or at the beginning of this year, actually March, talking about what a scheme might look like and whether or not, seeking ideas about whether it will be a good idea. So that scheme had a lot of really great features, but there was two things that we thought really needed some work. One is that they proposed that it was run by the beverage industry, and we see that as a bit of a fox in the hen house kind of approach. We would really love to see it run by an independent entity. No reason why the beverage guys can't be part of that, because obviously they've got a stake in what happens, but we don't really want to see them in control of the system. They're the people who are making and creating all that packaging in the first place. We think it's fair that they should cover the cost of that packaging, not impose that on society to support their business model, but we really don't want to see them be the people who are leading the way, because there's lots of reasons why they have an incentive to keep recovery rates low so that they don't have to pay as much. And the second thing is really what I think you guys might be more interested in, is connecting up the dots between implementing a container return scheme and putting in place an effective resource recovery network in New Zealand. I know that in the Wellington WMMP, that's one of the key goals, is to investigate and explore how you can get a good resource recovery system happening across the region. And a lot of other people are doing the same thing. So, really see that the overlap between the idea of getting these resource recovery sites going, a lot of people talking about transitioning their transfer stations into more effective resource recovery sites. So instead of being maybe, 90% rubbish, 10% recycling, it's kind of 90% or maybe 70% recovery and 30% rubbish, which would be a big transition to make over the next few years. And the useful thing that having the proposal that government put up was to have most of the containers going back to supermarkets. And the reason they said that would be a good idea is that it's convenient. People go to the supermarket anyway. It's a good idea to get them going there. And about 70% of people in a Consumer Institute survey said that they would find that convenient. The problem with taking it back to supermarkets is that you're basically perpetuating the same model. You buy a single-use drink container from the supermarket, you take it back, get your 20 cents, you go back inside and buy another single-use drink. And what we would really love to see is a model which is more 50-50. So you would have half of the sites might be supermarkets, so it's easy and convenient for people to go to, but half of the sites might be the new resource recovery centres, community recycle centres, kind of facilities where people might be able to go, and they would be exposed to all sorts of different options, lots of opportunities to recycle or reuse or repair or recover new things, lots of new ideas about how to think, to behave in a more resourceful way. And that way we could be working on, when all that foot traffic's coming to your site, they're also getting that chance to be exposed to new ideas which might shift them towards more sustainable lifestyles. And so I see that the revenue that would come from the handling fees that are included in the container return scheme, that would be a really good thing to see coming into the new community recycle centres or resource recovery centres, so that it can help to cover the operating cost of those places. And it's like a little mini business unit that you can tuck in and help to cover the cost. The proposal government put up was quite good on the relationship between container return scheme and curbside recycling. They'd thought that through quite well, and there's quite a lot of writing about that, but there's really very little information about how this idea of, when we roll out this project, which is container return scheme, how could it overlap with the desire for councils to see these resource recovery centres come into play? And I guess that is really the gist of it. I know that you guys are, working in this area, that you all have an interest, and that's why you're on this committee, and that you're also involved in your communities and, working on behalf of them to get a good outcome. I guess there's three things that I'd really love to see you guys do. Really love to see you advocating for a strong container return scheme. It's not over the line yet. I think that it's really important for government to feel that there's people who think this is a good idea and they want to have it happen, so that they have the confidence to put the legislation through. In the WMMP process, it will be really good for you to think hard about how these new things that are what we call product stewardship are going to fit in. The container return scheme has the opportunity to bring a lot of benefits to your community. And in the interest of you guys getting away by smoko time, I won't do the long story about all of that. But I really think that it's an important thing to reach out into your communities and understand what the benefits might be for them, but also to think about how the WMMP could take a really clear position on how this is all going to fit together for your region. I guess a question I have is that Zero Waste Network we're working on this stuff all the time. We're connecting up with a lot of communities and reaching out to a lot of different organizations to see whether we can build some sort of coalition or some sort of clear position that everyone can agree on about how we want this thing to be implemented, because the devil's in the detail, as you guys will always know. We could have a scheme that doesn't really deliver a lot of great outcomes for everybody, or we could have a scheme that really does deliver the goods for us all. So if you're interested in knowing a bit more about it, or keeping you in the loop on our work, then I'm very happy just to supply the briefings that we are doing for people on that. Yeah, so that's it for me. And, thank you so much to Hedy and Laurie for making the time for me on the agenda. And, really appreciate you guys devoting, 10 minutes of your life to thinking about this stuff. But yeah, I think it's really important for you guys to hold it in mind as you're going through, the election cycle as well as the coming years. Kia ora.
Ngā mihi nui, Sue. That's awesome. We have questions. And I have some, but first we'll start with Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, great. Kōrero, Sue, thank you very much. Could you remind us what the timelines the government are talking about? Is there an indicative date for when they hope to launch a scheme in New Zealand?
At the moment, they had their consultation in March. They got heaps and heaps of responses, so some very long ones as well. So they're considering taking it to Cabinet for sign-off, kind of like, do we really agree that we want to go to the next step and put a scheme in place to the end of this year is the time. And then they're talking about putting legislation, like creating legislation, which obviously would take probably at least a year. And given that next year is election year, maybe a bit longer. So the timeline at the moment is 2025 for implementation. Yeah, it's a bit of a long game, but I think it's really important for us to be thoughtful about how we kind of piece together some of these different ideas. Otherwise, we're going to end up wasting a lot of time and energy putting them all in as individual things when we could think about it in a more integrated way.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Kia ora, if there are no other questions from councillors, I've got a couple. So just in terms of Australia, did they go into the resource recovery or the community-based opportunity for the container return scheme? And do you have a bit of analysis on where they've landed with that and what can we learn from their journey?
There's a lot of different models. So pretty much everywhere they have different models. So each of the states in Australia, they've got 7 different, sort of 7 different schemes, 7 different states. In some places, they really have gone quite strongly with community models. Some places, that there's been a procurement process where they've got a big provider who's then enabled community and social enterprise and some of the sort of social service organisations like Salvation Army to get involved in running sites and providing different services under the umbrella of the large companies. In some places like Western Australia, they've been much more direct and had contracts directly with community operators. So there's a range of different sites that you would end up with. You'll have everything from massive big processing plants where you've got 25 million containers coming through a year, to sites where you might have people coming and dropping off commercial recycling from small to medium enterprises. You might have households coming in with all of their stuff. You might have community organizations who are collecting, like sports clubs or social organizations collecting up bulk containers and bringing them in, and they might have 6 or 8 million containers going through a year. And then you might have a lot of smaller places which they call over the counter, and that's kind of like a little dairy or a rural community or a small organization somewhere where you might have somewhere around 1 million containers a year coming through, so a lot smaller scale. And I think in New Zealand we've got the opportunity to design schemes to design a kind of I guess what I would call the collection network. I think we really need to design the collection network in a way that gets the revenue and the foot traffic going to the places that will benefit the most. So say, for example, Minister Parker was at the opening of a resource recovery centre up in Auckland a couple of weeks ago in Onehunga. It's kind of been a bit of a collaboration to get it put together. So government has put a bit of money in to get the site set up. Auckland Council's been involved and Zero Waste Network's been involved. And the operators are Māori Pacific organisation who were good business people and doing a lot of good work in their community, looking to create jobs and opportunities for their people. But they didn't know anything much about recycling or, that sort of practical side of how to run a recycle centre. So Zero Waste Network has been supporting them in that respect, but they're the on-the-ground operators. And so I think there's a lot of, local economy is coming back on the radar, a lot more interest now in how you can get money dropping into communities. And I see, that this opportunity as being a really good one for us. I was on a webinar last week that Wastemans did, and they did there's two good slideshows, one from New South Wales and one from Western Australia. And so if it's useful, I could share the slide decks that they've sent out to us all if you would like to have a look at them.
So that would be amazing if you could forward those through to Heidi and she'll put them through to us. And
okay.
I have enough years to remember taking our Coke bottles back to the over-the-counter for 4 cents, and it was worth a lot to my brother and I. Councillor Elliott, do you have a question?
I do, thank you, Sue. Great presentation. You said that you're available to briefings. How would you prefer those briefings to councils in Wellington to occur? Are you able to Zoom? Do you want us to plan in with your itinerary? Do you want to contact our waste officers directly?
Well, I guess that what we're looking at doing is sending out, just regular update, like a couple of pages on where we're at and what's going on. We're looking, so I guess that there's an option maybe if you wanted me to do an update for this group each time I think you have quarterly meetings or something like that, I could come on and do them. And if you'd like me to do a briefing for your council specifically, then probably just get in touch and we could find the best way to do that. Because like I said, I do travel around quite a bit, but I'm based in Wellington about a third of the time. So there's that opportunity to come and speak with you, or if anyone wants to have a chat or whatever, happy to do that.
Thank you. That's good to know.
Hedy will be able to, you might have my email address, but Hedy will be able to share it with you anyway.
Thank you.
Kia ora, Sue. And yes, I think there are a group of officers that meet to help us with our regional waste minimisation plan. So I would really like to make sure you're connected with them so that we can have this as part of our plan that is coming up next year. Just a quick question. Actually, it's not a quick question, but maybe at another time you could present to us what our opportunities are, considering Auckland has made some further ground than us regionally on resource recovery. So maybe we could talk about that offline, a presentation on top tips on how they've worked and what we can learn from. That may be really useful as well.
Yeah, that could be good. I'm in touch with a few of our guys up there that have been involved the last 10 years working closely with council and the kind of stages they've been through and the sort of what things are working for them. I know they've learned a lot about procurement, just how do you buy? So, often council procurement process is pretty cumbersome and unwieldy for everybody. And so there's been a lot of development in that area. How can you buy services in a way which is not too complicated for people on the ground to get involved with and get local operators involved in the story as well as the big global corporates? Yeah, great. So love to do that.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you so much for your mahi, and highly recommend working with Sue. Any of you that are not yet, or Zero Waste Network, as Sue said, it's a long game, 20 years trying to get some change happening in this area. Okay, kia ora, Sue, really appreciate your time with us this morning.
Awesome. Hope you guys get away by Smoko. Oh, thanks.
It's just good to have a deadline.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. See ya. Thanks for the chance. Bye-bye.
Great. Okay, so now we are moving into our general business. No mai Stefan Barowie. Sorry, Stefan. Actually, any officers feel welcome to come and sit at the table because it's a bit lonely here, to be honest. So, yeah, I'll ask Stefan to introduce the report. Stefan, great to have you here.
Kia ora, councillors. Thank you for inviting us to present this report. It provides key updates on work that's been undertaken to implement the current Wellington Region Waste Management and Minimisation Plan. I'd also like to note that work is underway to carry out a regional waste assessment, and we've developed a timeline for the implementation of the new Wellington Region Waste Management and Minimisation Plan. Just noting that those timelines have pushed out slightly, so we intend to present the waste assessment to this committee now in December this year. And also as a result of that timeline being pushed out, the timeline for the WMMP has also been pushed out, so the draft will be presented to this committee in around April, May this year. I'll take the report as read and invite you to for any questions.
Kia ora, councillors. Do I have any questions on the report? I can't see the screen. That's all right. I am happy to kick off with a few questions then. Yeah, I've got to be honest, I do have some concern about the push out of these dates. And what, can I just have we got all of the officers online, Stefan, or is it just you today?
I'm not sure if the other officers are online.
Yeah, Hutt City Council is online as well.
Great.
Oh.
So that's Ewan.
Kia ora, Ewan. Okay, great. Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to understand what is the reason for the date having been pushed out, and what you see are the possible risks of these dates being pushed out as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
So the main reason is that the waste assessment requires an interpretation and analysis of data, waste data, throughout all of the council areas. And whilst some councils have up-to-date and accurate data, some are slightly lagging behind. And I'll invite Nigel Clark from Porirua City Council just to give an overview of the effect that that's going to have on the development of the next waste management and minimisation plan, because if we don't have that accurate data, then we can't develop that plan, basically. So over to you, Nigel.
All right.
Well, welcome, Nigel. Kia ora.
Good morning, councillors and Madam Chair. I think the waste assessment itself is important to developing a WMP, but it's not the be all and end all. Across the whole of New Zealand, data on waste has been inordinately difficult to put in place. The National Waste Data Framework that the Ministry's been working on has been underway for the last 15 years. They're trying to get consistency and analysis around some of that. It's not easy, and the data that we do have is primarily about recycling and waste statistics from landfill. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that whilst it's important that we try and do the best that we can, it isn't the be-all and end-all in terms of actually developing a waste minimisation and management plan. I think for this plan, it will be really important for us to have a look at what is going on with the National Waste Data Framework, but also to actually address that within our region and try and make sure that we do get better data, and that will inform future WMPs. For us, I think we are in a position where I think we can meet those timelines. Yes, they have been pushed out slightly because we haven't been able to get as much data as we would like for those very reasons that I've just talked about. There's been a really good level of interest in the consultancies, and we have some excellent people in place that can help us work through that. A core part of the project that we've been asking consultancies to work with us on is actually developing those local action plans based around our strategic intent, which is certainly guided by the recent work from the Ministry on transforming recycling. It is a step change from what we have had in the past, and there's lots of information that we can draw on to do that. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
I have to be honest, not really. I think we had a plan to make sure that we achieved getting these reports through by the end of this triennium, and we're not seeing that. So is it just Porirua that has not been able to complete the information required to this point, Porirua City Council?
I can speak to that. So there are 3 councils where there is a lack of good data. There's Porirua City Council, and they intend to carry out a swap analysis in October this year, which will then provide the most up-to-date and accurate data available for that city. But also Kapiti Coast and Wairarapa don't have the right level of data available to carry out a full waste assessment on a regional basis.
Is it possible that the other councils would like to speak to this and just how they see that this will impact on the timeline and the plan? Thank you.
Maybe Jörn and Dale, would you like to speak to this?
I probably can't add too much at the moment. I mean, in terms of Hutt City Council's contribution, we've certainly supplied all the data we have got, and in fact, we did carry out a new waste assessment and also a bin audit, curbside bin audit earlier this year, which now is flowing through to that waste assessment. Some of the other things that we have done at the Hutt City Council end is that we've spent, and actually that lines up with what Porirua is doing, we've been working with Sustainable Coastlines to set up monitoring sites for litter to get a much more focus on litter management and how do we, understanding where it comes from and what it's made up of and how, and that might then help us for the next WMMP and putting more of a focus on litter management because the previous one didn't really have that. So I guess from a Hutt City Council perspective, we're basically ready to go. Although one thing that both Stefan and Nigel haven't talked about is that, like many other areas, I'm certainly aware that there's been significant resource pressures on staff. So, for example, we haven't had a regional waste planner, and that employment, so that is now underway to recruit that person, and that will help alleviate that pressure at the regional level. So we haven't really had anyone at that regional level to kind of help drive those projects forward over the last year. That's probably all I can say at the moment. As Nigel said, the waste assessment is not the be-all and end-all. It's an input into the WMMP, but equally the new WMMP, we are recruiting a lead consultant at the moment to lead that piece of work. And once that's in place, we can get underway. And the data will obviously be an input into that. But ultimately, it's also about the region coming together and really being, working through that process. And I know that Wellington City, for example, has already is slightly ahead in terms of its local action plan, whereas I think most other councils, if not all other councils, haven't started on this work yet. Again, this is partly due to resource pressures. There's unfortunately only so much we can deliver the staff currently and resourcing that we've got. It's not a money problem in terms of the waste levy. There's plenty of that there now, but it's actually a people issue. We haven't got enough people on the ground to do all the projects that we've got on the go. And the regional WMMP, the waste assessment, the licensing, let's not forget that. That's still in the middle of being implemented as well. That's only part of it. There's obviously all the waste projects that each of our councils have, and we may not. Some of us just haven't had we have been understaffed to deliver those. I'm not sure if anyone else wants to pipe in.
Thanks. Yeah. Kia ora, Councillor. My name is Daljinder Rupal, and I'm at Hutt City Council.
Kia ora.
If I may just add to that narrative, yes, we need the data, and citing an example of Hutt City Council, we have provided the data, but for us to actually get the right supplier to provide us the data, that was delayed by about 5 months. There is only a set number of suppliers in the region and nationally who can work on this data, and all of the councils are wanting a piece of them to provide them the data required for the WMMP. So herein lies the issue of not only just staff capacity, but also contractor and supplier capability and capacity to provide us with that data. That's one thing. The procurement for the consultant to work on the WMMP that has been mentioned, that is also a piece in the puzzle, and we want to get the right consultant. We are at a crossroads that we need to develop the next 6 years of the most important WMMP, and we have quite a few issues coming together that we need to put our minds together and come up with solutions. What needs to go into the WMP with regards to food waste, with regards to CND, with regards to CRS that Sue spoke about earlier. So how we are thinking is that the luxury of time that we had has been taken away slightly. We are just about at the appropriate level of time to be developing the WMMP. That's how I would look at it. And once we have the consultant on board, we need to monitor the timelines very closely and report back to you. Thank you.
Kia ora, thanks, Dil. And thank you for bringing up so we've got 2 risks as have been outlined there. So time and resource. And thank you, Ewan. I think that's the worrying part for me, that when we push it back time-wise, when the resource is not plentiful, we are running into challenges. Councillor Taylor, do you have a question, please?
Thank you, Chair. So given the constraints around resourcing and the competing pressures on timeline, what level of confidence do officers have that this actually will be able to be achieved, given that there could still be further setbacks, and particularly considering the time pressures around the election time? And secondly, if enough reliable data has not been gathered in the given timeline, what would be the path forward with the WMP?
Yeah, just to answer that, we've been given assurance from officers amongst all of the 8 councils that work is now underway to get that data within the required timeframes. So we're confident that we will meet those the timeframes both within the waste assessment and the development of the WMMP. I'd just like to invite Mike Berger from Wairarapa District Council just to offer his view on the resourcing levels and the data requirements for the waste assessment.
Kia ora, Mike, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm Mike Berger from Marsden District Council. As previously heard a few minutes ago, that we have resourcing issues. We don't have a waste minimisation officer. I myself am new to the organisation. We're working through all the data. What we have achieved up till now is getting our environmental impact process and policy through. And we had a meeting last week with the three councils, being South Wairarapa District Council, Carterton and myself, with our committee, and we will be going forward and implementing and gathering all the data that Stefan has requesting. We do realise the, as you've stated through the chair, the urgency. We acknowledge that, we embrace that, and we will be working through it, going through over our resourcing issues.
Thank you, Mike. That's good to hear your assurance. Hopefully I'll be back to say, hip rah, we achieved it. Councillor Lee.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora tātou. Yeah, a bit of a segue from the resourcing question for Stefan, probably more of a general discussion one too. I know Wellington has a seed fund. I'm not sure if the other councils do, but my first question, is it, I mean, what is the level of uptake of the seed funding? Is it excessively onerous? And is it keeping up with almost like the marketplace? Because $2,000 is a lot of work, even to apply for $2,000.
So just speaking from a Wellington City Council perspective, we have 3 levels of seed fund that's available. You're right, there's a small seed fund up to $2,000, then up to $25,000, and then up to $100,000. The uptake is generally good, particularly for the higher levels. So we did issue a grant last financial year for $94,000. Which was for waste education. But yeah, there is a good uptake. I can't speak for the other councils. I assume that they have the same seed funds available.
Because I can briefly talk to it to Hutt City if you like.
Go ahead, Ewan.
Yeah. So look, Hutt City Council doesn't have a seed fund, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that they are relatively resource intensive to administer. So, you know, as you say, particularly for the smaller amounts of money, and by resource intensive to administer, it means there will need to be a person that manages this. And given that we're already under resource pressures, I haven't, for the last 2-3 years, we haven't looked into setting something like that up, and we've focused on implementing other projects instead. So I know that Wellington City has one, but equally for some of the smaller councils, it may not be feasible to run a seed fund with the level of funding available and the level of human resources available.
Thank you, because I think even the Waste Minimisation Fund in MFE, even that's quite difficult to tap into.
Yep, I can talk on behalf of Porou City Council if you like, Councillor.
Off you go, Nigel. Thank you.
All right, Councillor, Porou City Council doesn't have a seed fund. What we have chosen to do at the moment is provide major services, so a construction and demolition facility. We're looking at organics processing, so that's green waste and food waste in conjunction with the other councils. And we're also creating a major resource recovery park. So that it's a different approach. We're trying to provide the necessary services, and we invite community groups to come and participate where we can.
Richard, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, kia ora, good morning. Thank you, Chair. We do have, it's a seed fund. We have the Environmental Waste Minimisation Fund, which comes around every year, and that was just recently increased to 25K. And yes, it is a bit of a resourcing challenge. We do get the funding up, but it does take a few weeks to go through the applications, do the assessment, and then get that funding out. So we also have the sustainability stimulus grant as well, which does cover waste, but is more focused more broadly on sustainable actions in the community. So, yeah, that's what we're up to at the moment. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Richard. You all right with that, Councillor Lee? Kia ora. Councillor Elliott, do you have a question?
No, Madam Chair, I was just wondering if, in the absence of an officer at this meeting, do you want me to speak briefly to Capity's grants?
I'm here as well, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Robbie.
Yay.
Hi.
Are you comfortable
Hey.
for Robbie to speak to that, Councillor Elliott?
Yep, sure. Yep, we have 3 types of grants levies available.
Yeah, so they just closed last week. So we've got the community waste reduction, business waste reduction, and this was the first time we did the seed funding, so a significant amount for someone to manage a long-term project of the Otahonga Resource Recovery Hub, which is going to tie into sort of that network of recovery hubs that other councils are looking at. So yeah, that just closed last week with 4 expressions of interest, which was really good. So there's a lot of really quality applications for the first seed funding round for us. So we're just going through those at this stage now.
Kia ora. I would note, but just over the years, not being as involved as long as Sue, but certainly have been on this bandwagon for a wee while, around about 10 years. I note that the grants do have a strong influence into the community and get community buy-in. I can see Stefan nodding. Is that in agreement, Stefan?
Well, it certainly provides a level of incentive for new initiatives within the city and the region, and things initiatives such as Kai Cycle, Kai Bosch, all of those things started up somewhere, and I think they've been supported by the council through seed funding in the past. So it does result in good outcomes.
I'd also appreciate that if you haven't got anyone to resource them, to resource the action is slightly difficult. I have a question, and I think one of the main things for me getting to the end of this triennium, I was really hoping to understand or have a measurement against how we have gone against our targets in the report. So with the delay, when will we be expecting to see this, and will this be part of the consultation with the community as we go out on our next WMMP? I think if I was a member of the community, I'd be saying, yeah, great, but how did you go with your targets on the last one?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. We did discuss this at our last steering group meeting, the officers' steering group meeting, and whilst we acknowledged that we were hoping to provide a state of play as part of this report, again, we just didn't have the resources available to provide a full response. So our intention is to provide that to the committee in December.
That would be really helpful to also have as an amendment. I think that, just out in the community. So I don't know, Stefan, or if anyone's listening, if we could get that added to the amendments. I think from a community perspective, that's what I hear. They understand about the plan, but actually they want to understand how we are progressing, and I would like the next committee to have that as a clarification, that to expect that measurement on how we've been going with our goals. Who is that possible? Who would undertake? Well, we could take some minutes to put that in as an amendment when we have a break. Are there any other questions, councillors? Just from me, then, just noting the, sorry, just give me a moment. I think you called it an advisor, the position an advisor, Ewan. So can you just clarify, do we have a role being advertised for that position, and why haven't we had someone in that position over the last few months?
I can talk to the first part. So we have advertised for that position. So it's an advisor, regional waste management and minimisation plan. It's quite a mouthful as a job title, but it has been in the market. It closed last Sunday, and we've got interviews this week. Yeah, so we hope to make an appointment within the next couple of weeks. And maybe Jörn can provide a bit of detail into why that position hasn't been in place for about 12 months.
That is a good question. Well, I will tread carefully. Look, we've had Stephanie in the role, and you may recall, Councillor Finn, that she left in 2021. So we haven't had someone in that role for quite some time, and I guess there was some disagreement, I think, of whether or not the role was needed. Regardless of the ins and outs, I can say that Hutt City did take the initiative to propose to the region about 2 or 3 months ago to reset this role, re-establish it, and employ someone, because we do need help at the regional level to deliver on the various work programs. We do have obviously consultants in place to help us through some of that work, be that the WMP, be that the waste assessment, but it still requires ultimately someone to pull all these pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah.
So hence why the role was advertised, and we're trying to recruit someone into it.
Thank you, Jörn, and thank you for being honest there. I really appreciate it, and I just I think the delay now is in, as in the governance role, is a reflection that we hadn't had that position, that vacancy filled, and now we have been pushed back in terms of time frames, regardless of if that was. Yeah, just extra hands would really help to progress these projects. And I can see how busy and the pressure on all of our teams as officers to undertake your localised strategies as well as the regional one. It is really hard. So I strongly recommend that we make sure that position is filled, and that we can get cracking with the regional overview to coordinate all of this together. Thank you.
If I can add one point to this, Madam Chair, which is that some of the reports, in fact, all the reports that would have come to you over the last few months have basically been pulled together by the officers, obviously. However, going forward, the intention is also for that regional planner role to basically compile these reports. So it's not just the resource shortages that we have in our team, which then put extra pressure on people to pull together reports for this committee. So the idea is for that person to lead the development of these and basically deliver on some of the expectations, be that, how are we tracking against projects, how are we tracking against the current WMP objectives, et cetera, et cetera. So provided we can get someone suitable for this role, I would expect reporting to improve going forward.
Thank you, Jörn. And I can say as chair, this is just some reflections over the last year and a half in particular. We have slowed down, so we have not, we've let go of some of the quarterly meetings because of that reason, understanding that there has been resource pressure and pressure on officers, and that if they weren't necessary, we would keep moving on. But I can say I'm disappointed to be at the last meeting of the triennium and not have these reports to us at this point. I have a question also on the regional waste operation licensing facilities. Can someone just give an overview of how we are tracking against the planned tracking time? I didn't see anything in the paper on that. So just a bit of an overview on how we are tracking compared to how we had anticipated we would be tracking, please.
I can speak to how we're tracking, but
Thanks, Stefan.
I'm not aware of how we were supposed to be tracking. I'm quite new in this role as well. I've only been in this role since February.
You're taking a lot on your shoulders.
Exactly. Having said that, we have been progressing the regional waste officer, the waste operator and facility licensing project, and we've piggybacked onto some work that the councils within the Bay of Plenty have been doing around this. So we've met with them where we've committed to provide some resource in terms of the procurement of that piece of software, and also in terms of funding some of that work through our levy. Where we're at, the BOPLAS is the organisation that's carrying out that procurement, and there is a small section within the report around this. So we believe that there's a procurement exercise just about to be undertaken, and then we'll get an operator on board to develop that facility and operator licensing system. Nigel.
Thanks, Nigel.
Thank you. We were, I got here before you, so I've been here a little bit longer. Where we got to with the licensing was that we were underway with developing the bylaw, and that's been proven quite successful. So a lot of the councils have actually adopted that bylaw and the licensing provisions within there. A little problem came up when the ministry decided that they were going to take over all licensing. So that would have meant that any efforts that we went into preparing a licensing system would have been expensive and wasted effort. So we did wait a little bit just to see what the outcomes from the ministry were going to be. We are not entirely sure where the ministry is heading with that at the moment, and we've decided to go ahead regardless. A lot of the data that we do need does require that licensing to take place, because most of the data that we need for all our work is held by the private sector, and you need the regulatory tools to actually to get that data from them. So I think we've made good progress, and I'm looking forward to seeing that underway fairly shortly.
Great. Could I get clarification on what fairly shortly means? In terms of timeline, like what's our target to have that in operation?
I could go out on a limb and say that by the end of this calendar year, we will have a company on board that will develop the operator and facility licensing system. So we can provide a good update at the next committee meeting in December.
Correct.
And just to add to this, so in most bylaws, the licensing scheme or approach was supposed to kick in 2 years after each of the council's bylaws had been enacted. Now, in January 2022, that will effectively be 2 years. So I would say we won't have it in place right from the get-go. And there will probably be some delay in actually getting it into place because you first have to have an operator in place, and then make sure you develop and design the system so it fits with various requirements, and then you get to the launch point. What that delay might be, I don't know, but we'll have to report that in December, I would say.
Okay, Ewan, thank you for that news. So we can be assured that we will have an update to that position in the next with a timeline in the next set of papers for this committee.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Councillors, are there any other questions here? I see none. We are actually at morning tea time, so I'm going to suggest that we do take a very quick break. I have sent through a few amendments to add to our noting papers today. I'm asking that you take a quick break to have a look at those, and if you have any questions of officers on those when we get back from morning tea, that would be appreciated. And there may be another amendment we discussed to come through, so I'll check in with Stefan on that as well. Okay, so let's just say, do you think 10:22 is too? Yeah. So we're going to take 10 minutes, so that's a very quick cup of coffee, but then hopefully it'll be a very quick moving of the paper. Can everyone just check in their emails that they've had the additional amendments? Okay, kia ora tātou. That was a very hasty cup of coffee at our end. Might have been a little bit ambitious with the break. I'm just checking that everyone did receive the amendments that came through. Great, kia ora. So now I will be the mover for the motion, and so I'll need a seconder to get the recommendations and amendments on the table. Oh, Councillor Edwards, was that you? Yes, as the Deputy Chair, I really appreciate you stepping up for me at this point for our last meeting. Great. Now, do anyone have any questions of officers regarding the amendments that I'll move with the substantive today? I do, because they're a little bit quick, but I just wanted to check with Stefan, particularly on number 7, just that, number 6 actually, recommend that the Waste Officers Steering Group adopt a project tracking timeline dashboard to enable governance to have a clearer understanding of the projects, etc. What is your advice on this in terms of, will this be able to be achieved with ease, and do you also agree with or do you support the recommendation?
Yeah, so from a WCC perspective, we've already set up this dashboard and we're tracking the Zero Waste programme through our project management office. So we've got the structure in place, and I think it's achievable to add the regional actions within this recommendation. So, yeah, I'm comfortable with it.
Great. Kia ora, Stefan. That's awesome. Thank you. I'm hoping other officers are as well. Councillor Elliott.
From a Hutt City Council perspective.
You agree, Ewan? Thank you. Was that?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, the regional planner that we are currently recruiting will be based at Wellington City. So that creates a good alignment with, utilising the same project reporting approach.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. That's awesome. Councillor Elliott.
Been answered. Thank you.
Great. Okay, now that then, if we have no more questions, now that the motion has been moved and seconded, we will move into debate. And I will just kick this off just to say, maybe we'll just get the first things out of the way. I must say that I was disappointed to receive this report and to understand that there had been delays on what we had set out to achieve. Officers, I thank you for your explanations, and I do appreciate that there are resourcing challenges. And that there has been a lot going on, but also as the governance group, I must say that I did feel uncomfortable handing this on in this state. But now that we have the amendments, at least the next triennium regional waste plan, minimisation, we really need to get a better name for this, Hui. They will have a clear directive on what needs to be done going forward. And I've had, thank you for the assurances that we will be able to meet our timelines, and that, yes, so we'll be looking forward to hearing about that in the next triennium. I just do want to say also, as the chair, that that did come as a bit of a surprise, and I would like to see this Hui come with a no surprises approach next time. I also want to say, I'm happy to. I have in good faith that there is a deep desire from all councils to focus on this process and a desire to achieve it, and understand that the plan is a really important part of our waste minimisation strategy. And for many of our councils, in fact, it's the only one our communities have got to relate to what work is being done by our councils in this space. And as we understand, we are now getting pressure from government as well as our communities and being enabled by higher levy funds to really start working on action. So my call is to all of our incoming councillors to really take heed and make sure that we work together on this, because for Wellington City, or I'm not sure about the region, but for our city, our waste is 7.5% of our emissions. This is nearly the same as our air travel emissions. So that is huge. So each takeaway cup that goes into landfill is having a big impact. So I just want to move on and also reflect on the achievements of this committee, and I would say that the waste minimisation bylaw is certainly one, and having said that, we can see how some of the actions from that bylaw have been quite cumbersome and heavy for our officers to actually put in place. So I want to acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge that over this time we've had to go through the COVID-19 impact and see the impact that's had on our waste systems, and particularly once again resourcing, and that, you know, the people that actually manage our waste have been impacted in various different ways. But also that as a team we've been able to come online to be able to keep managing this and maybe have some more time efficiency rather than travelling to Wellington for this hui. Although I miss having you all here, but thank Councillor David Lee for being the sole representative other councillor here today. So with that, I will hand on, perhaps Councillor Edwards, would you like to make some remarks, being the seconder?
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. I think you've said it pretty well, summarised it. It was a bit disappointing that we're starting to lag a little bit on our progress, but I think with that timeline, should some of us not be re-elected, a new crop of councillors have got a good starting point going forward. So yeah, I think there are some good amendments there and good motion.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Taylor, would you like to say a few words?
Kia ora. Thank you, Chair. Look, I actually wanted to thank both yourself as Chair, Councillor Edwards as Deputy Chair, Hetty, all the other officers who have past and present played a part. These have been an extraordinary 3 years, particularly with the COVID disruption, and obviously now the huge constraints that have come on in terms of not just the amount of government legislation and work that has to be done, but also the staffing issues involved. So I do actually want to give some praise to the staff for what they have managed to accomplish within time, and acknowledging the difficulties and unfortunately not being able to bring forward the finished completion that we would have liked to have had for the end of our 3 years. I also wanted to make sure that within the cracks, we did have a very good presentation a couple of years ago that was done in terms of resource recovery in a big disaster, and I just want to make sure that piece of work continues as well through into the next training, making sure that if we do have a large-scale disaster in the Wellington region, that we have pre-thought about where we can actually work through the disaster and the resource recovery of any materials that might need to be removed. So I'm just noting that, highlighting that, but that's all from me. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor Taylor. I agree that was a very enlightening presentation. So yes, would be good to keep us updated on how we are tracking there. Councillor Elliott, would you like to say a few words?
Look, thank you. Yes, I'd like to tautoko Councillor Taylor's comments, especially in acknowledging the COVID triennium that we have all worked through, and thanking staff, haere everyone, for all of your efforts and hard work in your mahi on this committee. Just as a possibly parting word, I've been around since we signed the new joint committee, the new waste minimisation plan, and it was seconded by Iona Pennant, Green MP and representative for Wellington City Council. And I just want to repeat her words here, maybe for the future, which were that we didn't go far enough in setting our targets at 1/3 waste reduction. So yeah, just to keep that in mind, you know, look at that figure, 1/3. Is it enough of a target? Can we do better as a region? But thank you all.
Kia ora, Councillor Elliott. That is really, thank you for bringing Iona Pannett into the room. Councillor Pannett, she's, I remember when she was working on this waste minimisation plan years ago, and she put this out into the community, but yes, that was her, those were her words. So I would say yes, as the community and the government, I know, and as I'm sure many of the councillors here, we do want to do better, and that is possibly one of the reasons why we, Wellington City, as an amendment 5, I think it is, we are really needing to push this a lot harder. So there may be the situation where we can't wait for a regional situation because we've set these deadlines for ourselves. But we will be working hard to make sure we can share any of that information or learnings, or keep the regional committee alongside us as we go forward. So yes, with that, I would like to thank all of you councillors for being here. It has been a pleasure. Your dedication and your support is much appreciated. I do want to thank all of our officers. We do understand it has been a very hard triennium, and the pressure is coming on us, but also we've been up against many challenges out there in the world, and with the big epidemic being one of them. But yes, I will just hand over to Councillor Lee before I have a final sign off.
Yes, I don't want to be the last word. I'll leave that to the chair. But I'd also like to thank the chair, the members of the committee, and in particular staff, because it's not a sexy area to be in. But I'm a bit of an infrastructure nerd and waste nerd, so I've been doing this easily for the last 15, 20 years. But I love waste. I mean, or actually minimising it, actually. But I think as a society, we're not very good with waste. We're probably at the bad, or not probably at the worst end in terms of globally. So we're not that 100% clean, green, pure, but we're actually quite wasteful, and we're right at the bad end. And that's because we've got a small population base, a lot of places to throw our waste, and generally it's a gully or a hole over the edge. So I think we've got a lot to do. I know we've achieved a lot in the last 3 years, still so much more to do. But I think we can take, we can learn from others. Like, I think with organics, I think South Korea is right up there. I mean, they live in apartments, but yet they have a zero food waste to landfill policy. They can do it. San Francisco, they're zero waste, and that bucks the trend from, compared to the other US cities and Western cities. And I think even the UK, I think London is very good, and also Japan as well. So I think others have shown that we can do it, but we just need to just do it, isn't it? So back to you, but I would like to come back again and carry on this journey. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Kia ora, Councillor Lee, and thanks for lifting this up a level. And I think, yes, waste isn't particularly sexy, but I think the interesting thing for me is that it's a systems-based approach. And when you think systems, that's where I get so excited about opportunities like the circular economy, that actually through the way we use our resources, that we can actually enable more jobs, not that we can resource them at the moment, and well-being. And I think that was the point that Sue was trying to point out to us in her presentation this morning. So, and more equity within our community as well. So I just want to encourage all of us as we put our tools down on this committee for this triennium. Thank you for all the mahi that you've done. And I look forward to seeing this committee progress for the next triennium and really help our waste minimisation plan progress into a circular economy. Indeed, it's the only thing that's made me excited as a past fashion designer about a new system and a system that we can fit into. And that is why I believe it so heavily, and that is why I am proud to be chair of this committee. So kia ora. And actually just one more put out to our Democracy Services team for their amazing support, all of that goes in behind the scenes, to Heidi here and Letitia, and is it Marcella? Yeah, down the back, yay. Just thank you all, and yeah, kia ora. So I think that is us, and now we will put the motion to the vote. Would anyone like any of those taken separately? No. So I now put the motion, which has been moved and seconded. Those in favour press 1 or I or green, and those against put up their hand. So this is for.
Cool, that's carried.
Ka whakapuaki o kua mana. So I declare the motion carried. May we now stand for the karakia. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te uru tapu nui. Kia wātea, kia mama, te ngākau, te tinana, te wairua. I te arataka tū. Koe rā e rongo, whakairia ake ki runga. Kia wātea, ai rā kua wātea. Kia ora, everybody. Thank you. And Heidi will put out Sue's contact and also